Today I'm going to be sharing with you how to make homemade s'mores from start to finish. We're going to start off with our graham cracker recipe. Here's everything you're going to need. 1 cup of softened salted butter. If you prefer, you can use unsalted. 3/4 cup of brown sugar, a half teaspoon of salt, 4 tablespoons of honey, 1.5 cups of flour, 1.5 cups of wheat flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon, and 1/2 teaspoon of cardamom. In your large mixing bowl, you're going to add your 1 cup of softened salted butter, which is 2 sticks of butter, or you can use unsalted butter. And to the butter, you're going to add 3/4 cups of light brown sugar. One-half teaspoon of salt, one and a half teaspoons of cinnamon, and 1/2 teaspoon of cardamom. Now when adding the honey, I recommend oiling your measuring spoon with some type of your favorite oil spray. But I did not have that, so I went ahead and just used it as is, and we are measuring out 4 tablespoons of honey. You're going to see it's harder to get out when you don't prepare your measuring spoon with that oil spray. But let's go ahead and just get this done. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward this because it did take a while to get it out. Now we're ready to blend everything until everything is well blended. I went ahead and put my blender on medium speed. While this is blending, go ahead and grab yourself a medium bowl and a sifter. We're going to start sifting our flour. We're going to start off with 1.5 cups of unbleached flour. In this recipe, it's important that we are going to use equal parts of wheat flour, so we're going to sift 1.5 cups of wheat flour. This is what's going to give your graham cracker that sturdy texture, but it's not going to make it dry if you were just to use all wheat flour. While making this recipe, I came to realize that wheat flour doesn't sift very well, so just go ahead and add the wheat flour without sifting it to your unbleached flour mixture. To the flour mixture, I added 1 teaspoon of baking soda and whisked it by hand before adding it to our wet ingredients. Go ahead and add half of your flour mixture to your wet ingredients. Blend that for a little while and then you'll add the remainder. As you notice, as this dough begins to form, it looks like it's more on the crumbly side, but don't worry because the butter that we've added to this recipe is really going to help it take its form and its shape when we start to roll it out between our parchment paper. I'm scraping the bowl right now, going to give it one last mix before we head over to our flat surface and roll this out so we can start to shape our graham crackers. Here's what it looks like. Now let's grab ourselves some parchment paper, lay it on a flat surface. We're gonna pour this dough out in the center. It is a bit crumbly, but don't worry about it. We're gonna start to see it take its shape. Now, when we start to press this dough together, you may wanna use your hands, but I prefer to use gloves. This way it's less mess, it doesn't stick to my hands, and it just makes it a much easier process. So let's go ahead and start forming this dough by pressing it together. Now that we have a shaped dough piece, we're gonna go ahead and add another piece of parchment paper onto the top, press a little bit more. Now grab your muscles and begin to roll. I was rolling for quite a while. I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward this part because it did take me a little bit of while. Maybe I'm not that strong, I don't know. But our goal here is to make it 1/8 inch thick. So that way we don't have too thin of a graham cracker, but we don't want it too thick either. I didn't really measure the thickness. I kind of eyeballed it. So go ahead, and if you're really somebody who's precise, you're gonna go ahead and measure it with a measuring tape. But I think it came out fine. Like I said, this is going to take quite a while. So I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward it. Since we're rolling this out, it's going to be a while. I want to talk about two other tools that we're going to be using for this cracker recipe. One of them I've never heard of before. It's called a pastry docker. It is used when you make pizza, also when you make any kind of pastry or crackers. It helps because when you're rolling out your dough and you're preparing it to bake, you want to make sure that your pastry or your dough does not have any air bubbles in it. And also you want to create a cracker that cooks evenly, and this pastry docker that you see me using right now is going to help with that. Now it's cute because it adds those graham cracker like holes, which makes it look more realistic. And then also the bench scraper that I'm using here has a measuring tape on it because I want to make sure that my graham crackers are 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches. Now you can make your graham crackers as large or as small as you like. I just recommend whatever you do, make your graham crackers and your marshmallows the same size. Now we're not making the marshmallows now, but in the next part of the video you will be seeing that, and I do make sure that they both are 2.5 by 2.5 inches. At this time you're going to want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. We're going to be baking these graham crackers for 10 minutes. This recipe made about 32, now it's an approximate number because I really don't remember, made about 32 2.5 by 2.5 graham crackers, which is about 16 s'mores. Again, I don't remember the precise number, so please forgive me if I'm incorrect in that. We went ahead and we baked these batches for 10 minutes each. And I'm going to stop the video and we're going to move on to the next portion, which is making our marshmallows. In our homemade vanilla marshmallow recipe, we're going to be using 1.5 cups of regular granulated white sugar. 1 cup of water that will be divided into 2 1/2 cup servings, 1 cup of light corn syrup, and 3 unflavored gelatin packets, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and a tablespoon of vanilla extract. I'm going to be using a 9x9 baking sheet. You can use a 9x11, it will work just as well. Your marshmallows just may be a little thinner. And then take that baking sheet, line it with parchment paper, and add your favorite oil to it generously at the bottom. As you can see, I like using these clips. It helps keep the parchment paper from moving around. And then you're going to take about 1/2 cup of powdered sugar or more and generously coat the bottom of your pan. This is going to help your marshmallows from sticking. At the end of the recipe, before we take out the marshmallows, you're going to notice even though I've used all this powdered sugar, I still had a little bit of stickiness, but it's easily fixed by adding more powdered sugar to release those marshmallows from the pan. In a medium-sized pot, you're going to add 1/2 cup of that 1 cup of water, so you're only adding half of it right now. And to that water, you're going to add 1.5 cups of white sugar. At this point, I haven't turned on my stove at all, so I'm just adding everything into the pot. As soon as I add it all in there, I'm going to go ahead and put it on medium heat. So let's start adding our 1 cup of light corn syrup. At this point, we're going to turn on our stovetop to medium heat, and it's very important that you use a candy thermometer. You don't want your marshmallows burning. It will ruin the texture. So we're trying to reach a softball form, which is between 240 to 250 degrees. And it's very important as the stove is on that you keep an eye on it and you stir it constantly. This process is going to take a little while, so I'm going to fast forward a lot of this. Our mixture has now reached softball, so now I'm going to lower our stovetop to a simmer to keep it nice and warm. And off to the side, I'm going to go ahead and activate the gelatin packets. We're going to use 3 of these non-flavored gelatin packets, and we're going to add the rest of our 1/2 cup of water that we put off to the side to activate the gelatin. Now, while I was recording this, nothing is perfect in the kitchen, you guys. I lost a clip where I was pouring the hot syrup into the gelatin mixture in my mixer. When you're doing it, you want to be very cautious and careful. The syrup is extremely hot and you don't want to burn yourself. So although I'm not showing it to you here, I was very cautious about adding a little bit at a time and keeping your mixture at a low speed. You don't want that candy mixture to splash back up into your face or scorch your hands and your arms. I'm going to add my gelatin mixture to my stand mixer, and then you won't see me adding the hot syrup into that. So as you see here, there's no clip of it. I've already reached like a soft peak with our marshmallow mixture. This is going to take about 10 minutes to get to this point where it's white and nice and fluffy. When you get there, then you're going to go ahead and you're going to add your 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Mix this for a little bit while longer. As soon as this is done mixing, then you're going to go ahead and remove it from your mixer, and it's going to be ready to pour it into that 9x9 pan that we prepared with powdered sugar. Now our marshmallow mixture is ready to pour into the pan. We're not quite there yet. We're still gonna have to spread this out evenly so that we have nicely formed marshmallows. It's gonna take about 5 to 6 hours to set. It was really late this evening, so I decided to go to bed. It is okay to let it set overnight. You're gonna want to cover your marshmallow mixture loosely with saran wrap. And it's really nice to leave these clips on there because that's going to help the saran wrap from sinking into your marshmallow mixture. It is now the next morning and our marshmallows have set really nicely. Using the parchment paper to line our pan makes it real easy just to lift those right out. We're going to grab another piece of parchment paper. You're going to add about a half cup of powdered sugar. This sugar on the parchment paper is going to help when we flip over those marshmallows. The top of the marshmallows are still sticky, so it needs to get a generous amount of powdered sugar. I had to flip it back over so I can add it by hand and just rub it in there really well. Don't be afraid to add a lot of powdered sugar because any of the excess will get dusted off. As you can see, some of the paper is still sticking, so I'm going to use a little bit more powdered sugar. I'm going to grab my bench scraper. If you recall, at the beginning of the recipe when we were making our graham crackers, we made them at 2.5 by 2.5 inches. I want these marshmallows to match the size of our graham crackers, so I'm going to measure these out at 2.5 by 2.5 as well. I'm so happy the way these came out. I've made marshmallows before, but it's been a while. Just look at how beautiful and check out this stretch. Now that we got our marshmallow pieces ready for our s'mores, I had quite a few scraps left over. Don't throw these away. These make great miniature marshmallows for your hot cocoa or even your coffee. So I'm going to store these for later. I'm going to clean up just a little bit before we start prepping our chocolate for our s'mores. This step actually can be skipped, the part of decorating your chocolate, but it just makes it fun for all holidays. Although I did it for Valentine's, you can do this for any holiday or just because, right? You just unwrap those chocolates and you're going to break them in half so that way each square actually fits perfectly into our graham cracker and our marshmallows that we've already pre-measured. In a microwave-safe bowl, you're going to want to add just the right amount of melting chocolate so that way you can drizzle over your chocolate bars so that those sprinkles will stick. My chocolate that I used was a Ghirardelli, and it was about 30 seconds for me to melt that. To make for an easy application as well as cleanup, you don't need any fancy piping bags. Just take a little sandwich Ziploc bag, and a trick is to grab yourself a cup so that way you can utilize that cup to hold your bag open while you pour in your chocolate. Now you don't even have to seal your sandwich back up. You're just going to do a nice little twist and grab a pair of scissors and just clip it just enough so that the chocolate can come out, but not too much where it's pouring out. Now here's the fun part. You're going to take the piping bag that you created with that sandwich bag, do a zigzag motion all across those bars, and then go back and do it the opposite way. Work a little bit quickly here because that chocolate dries pretty quick. Add your sprinkles, and there you go. When the chocolate dries, it takes about maybe like a minute or so. It's really quick. You're going to take the excess that was overflow on each bar and just remove it. It'll break off real easily, and there you go. You have a nice decorated chocolate bar to go on top of your s'more. We're almost done where we're going to start assembling the s'mores, but we got to do a little bit of cleanup here. Okay, we're ready for the fun part, which is exciting for me to see everything come together in this labor of love. I'm grabbing my graham crackers, and I'm going to grab the marshmallows and the chocolate, and we're going to begin to assemble our s'mores. Now, I highly recommending at least once in your lifetime to make a homemade marshmallow and a graham cracker. There is nothing better than having a homemade s'more. I am not against having any store-bought marshmallow or graham cracker. I will eat a store-bought s'more anytime you give it to me. I enjoy marshmallows, but there's just something better about having something that is homemade. And having the salted butter in the graham cracker recipe was a game changer for me. The s'mores tend to be sweet because you got the marshmallow and you got the chocolate, but when you add that salted butter into your graham cracker recipe, it really curbs the sweetness. Now, if you make the graham cracker recipe and you're like, Rebecca, I don't like all that salt in my butter, you are more than welcome to use unsalted butter. I believe it will come out just as great. But that was just my preference, was using the salted butter. So feel free to alter the recipe and add unsalted butter. Now I'm just doing a little bit of packaging by adding the twine to keep these stable when I package them in a bag later. If you enjoyed this video, I would so appreciate for you to like, share, and subscribe to my channel.